for taking a few minutes of your time here today. As all of you remember, I left the council last November, and since then I've been asked to serve as one of the organization's two property agents trying to take care of our building. While John Henry's done extraordinary work to really keep up the day-to-day, I've changed my focus to a little bit more to our large-scale capital projects to keep those moving, right? As some have mentioned in the chat and elsewhere, there's really two budgets at the church, right? There is the annual budget, which pulls from our general fund, and then there's our capital budget, which comes from the building fund and is a separate set-aside account which accrues and collects money over years, and then we spend slightly upsettingly large amounts of it all at one time. So that either way to think about this is really like if you're in the gov mindset like me, you have annual budget money and then you have like no year money, right? Building fund is our no year money. So the background on this is really thinking about our Grow Restore Capital campaign. That was a capital campaign we launched 2 years ago in a congregational meeting in April, actually, almost exactly 2 years ago, that we kicked off, and we did that in conjunction with our milestone anniversary year. It was a huge success. As you remember, we set a goal of doing 250 hours of community service during that year, which we beat. And then we also set a goal of raising $250,000 towards the capital campaign and the building fund. We raised 187,000 of those at the final count, which some of which have been spent, but most of which still remain in the building fund, awaiting expenditure, as in addition to funds that were raised to the building fund before that campaign started and funds that have been raised there afterward, right? So the things I'm speaking about here are the projects that are funded by those monies and the projects that were approved by you in our April 14, 2019 congregational meeting. And so what you're looking at on the screen here is phase one of those capital repairs that took place. That was focused on the roof repairs. The roof is shown on the left-hand side. It took immediate repairs to the tiles, the decking, and the flashing of the roofs, which were, you can see it's pretty rotted, and it was allowing water to come in and deteriorate the plaster inside the sanctuary, which is shown in the next pictures over to the right. There's a picture there of some of our workmen with the scaffolding in the middle of the project. It was a very invasive project. Yeah, right, kind of crazy. What we find when we pull up those old roofs, Alan. And then what we've got in the middle there is additional work over the Martin Luther window. That's the plaster being reworked. And then we also took advantage of doing some of the electrical work, burying some wires and upgrading some electrical while we had the plaster down. And that's the picture in the bottom corner, as well as cleaning some windows. And that's myself and Rick Weisenstein spending some quality time on the scaffold there. That was phase one, right? That completed in September 2019. The total cost of that phase one was $102,000 and a little extra. And that was the roof, the plaster, the electric, and the associated projects. So as we switch to the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit more about phase two. If that was phase one, what's phase two and where are we and what's going on, right? So phase two, again, approved and set forth by you 2 years ago, is really what I'm speaking about for most of this time today. And it's the projects that are listed on the left-hand side there, right? It's stuff that's outside of the building to take better care of the property overall. The main thrust is the historical preservation projects shown on the top left, replacing those awful bell tower steps, which are in horrible repair, removing the mini steeple, or I've variously heard you all refer to it as the pagoda or the gazebo or the whatever it is, like, you know, let's take it away. It's crumbling and in terrible repair. Repairing the iron fence and the base around it. Yeah, the bell box. Repairing the iron fence around the property, restoring and displaying the original bell, by which I mean the bell that we still have possession of. We've subsequently discovered it's not as original as we hoped. And additionally, we'd like to reopen the louvers at the top of the bell tower. There's a picture shown there of what they look like in the 1930s. They're currently obscured by metal sheets. And we'd like to also improve the church's signage. That's one of the sets of projects. That's the historical preservation angle. In addition, we want to cover this areaway that you see on the bottom of the slide. It's currently open to the air. Yep, that's it right there where Pastor's mouse is. What we'd like to do is put glass paver tiles across the top of that, which will create a level walkway from the parking space on the north side of the property across that areaway to the red door, and then continuing flat across to the front door. There's a big advantage to this, which is that it would then be able to, someone would be able to reach the church's front door in our ground level with a mobility device, such as a wheelchair or walker, as well as this would help us a lot in terms of loading, unloading equipment from the parking space when we do events and programming. And the third thing, of course, is dealing with some stormwater to prevent damage to the basement. The picture you see on the bottom right corner is, again, some carnage from the drama school. It's a little bit of mold that's inside one of the cinder block foundation walls because the stormwater is coming down currently too close to the building. The goal would be to move the water away from the building and do those projects. So the question then, as we click to the next slide, is really like, where are we now? If this was proposed at the 2019 April meeting, what has happened in the intervening time period, right? And I think you all are right to ask that question and hold us to account for that. A lot has been done, and that's my goal here, is to help make you understand that. Looking down at my notes real quickly here. Phase 2 was a challenge in 2020 because of some of the COVID delays that we encountered. It was really tough to meet with vendors and carry out a lot of stuff, but we were able to do some high quality work already. One of the things that we were able to do was work with an arborist and work to determine what was causing the damage that you see to the basement bathroom, which is on the left side here. This is the old original men's room in the building. It's underneath the foyer that goes out to Volta Place. And you can see there's a little bit of mold in the walls. It was real bad. It was caused in that damaged area by this tree, which was planted 25 years ago, too close to the building. It's shown in that photo damaging a retaining wall that's in that area. It was also impacting the underground drain system in that area and causing it to come into the basement, causing that mold. Let's go back. There you go. The result of that was some rust that was happening. So here you see a pipe that's fully rusted through in the basement. This is a cast iron pipe from 1914, when the original construction of the building. This required removal and replacement because it was obviously, it can no longer be used in the current state, right? So what that required was removal of that large tree, and that's the picture you see there. We removed the tree last July. That required a bit of finagling with the city because they wanted to charge us money for a permit for it, which we were able to get exempted because it's damaging the building. I just want to use that as a chance to underline that specifically, like, we're doing everything we can to keep the cost of all these projects to the lowest possible, right? And stuff like that. And then the other angle that we worked, in addition to these efforts last year, was to develop the first of 2 historic project approval plans for the city. And this is what you see shown on the right-hand side, us working with our architect in the garden last fall. The architect is on the right. That's John Henry pointing, asking all the tough questions as usual. I want to give you a little bit of context for why we have to do that, right? We are in the old Georgetown Historic District, which predates DC home rule. So we actually work through the United States Federal Commission on Fine Arts to get any building permits. They have a lovely Byzantine entity called the Old Georgetown Board that insists on 2 reviews for every project. We have to draw pictures of what we propose the concept to be. And if that's approved, then we go back and we develop permits and specific engineering drawings of what the technical specifics will be of things like the glass pavers, right? So when I say we'd like to put those over the areaway, we, in concept, have been okayed to do that. Now we need to go back and hire a structural engineer to actually design and build out that project in the way that can be technically executed for the cost that we're willing to pay for it, right? And so that's something that still lies ahead of us, and specifically in time right now. But we are through the first concept approval of the work, which took place last fall. That's really exciting news because that gives us the thumbs up to move forward all the projects that I'm talking about. And it shows us that we're not going to get derailed necessarily during the building permit process. We got that approval on October 1st of 2020. And on the next slide, I'll show you a detailed picture of what that concept was that we presented to the old Georgetown board. It shows obviously rebuilt steps in front of the bell tower, rebuilt steps that are up to code and now will have hand rails there. It also includes creating a larger platform in that area, which will be connected to the front door by a pathway. This is something that is proposed because it will hopefully lend itself well to future outdoor gathering spaces. I want you to think about like Palm Sunday and these kinds of events, right? So the largest portion of that is that new pathway and those projects. There's a few other things on this slide that are pretty small, so I put the letters on. And indeed, there is no bell box. It's gone, right? When we are approved to do that work, even though the structure itself predates the historic cutoff, we were given the okay to remove the bell box, the pagoda. The things that I want to call your attention to here are at letter A. We received approval to do improvements to the church's signage. Signage is really contentious in the historic district. What we've proposed is a new sign in addition to the current sign. The new sign is A, it's shown at the corner. It would be intended to be seen by cars, people who would be driving by. The current sign is proposed to be moved a little bit to the right where it would be seen by pedestrians on the sidewalk, right? So different target audiences for those two items, both of which have a historic precedent. What we showed in the old Georgetown board diagrams are at C. There's a stormwater retention planter. I'll speak a little bit more about that in a moment. And at D, there is the paved, glass paved areaway, which connects the parking space as you walk to the left across your screen there, over to the front door. So that's the plan for what we'd like to try to do. But before we move to the next slide, I want to pause and see if there's any questions or thoughts about this that we can address. Is there anything, Pastor, are you seeing something that you want me to talk to? Okay, not seeing any, but feel free to raise your hand or unmute, and I'm happy to respond. I'm going pretty quick here. There's a lot to remember. So that's the scope of the work, right? And we talked about available funds and everything going forward. Let's click one slide. And so I want to share with you, I think we have really good questions about a lot of this, right? It has taken some time to develop a more detailed version of the plan. And it has taken a lot of council discernment and sort of like gulp to make sure that we can also pay for it, right? Because taking on a huge project is a large capital expense. So we're always nervous money-wise from where we stand as a congregation, right? Because we've known leaner times and we're maybe a little bit conservative as a result. So one of the opportunities that we've had to, that we've been able to do as part of this whole thing has been, we've tried our hand a little bit at applying for grants, right? If we don't have all the money on hand, maybe somebody else has a little bit they can tip over to us, right? And I want to raise up one of the specific organizations that we applied for a grant from was DC Preservation League, which does preservation initiative grants to help. They have a fund specifically for religious properties. And so we tried our very hardest to cobble together a coherent proposal to propose to them historic preservation of the bell tower as a structure. And let's give a click. The good news is that I'm excited to share with you this morning is we have been awarded a preservation grant to help support the bell tower work. And if you click one more time, you'll see that we are extraordinarily lucky in this regard. We've been awarded the amount of $58,000 to help modernize and preserve the elements of the 1914 bell tower. So I'm going to pause here for a second.
I'm going to pause. Yeah, I think you need a pause because I think we need to give this a major cheers. And I actually welcome people to take themselves off of mute. And Charles, I love how you said we on the grant application. No, that was you.
That wasn't just me. That was all of you. You know, I picked all of your brains. I couldn't have done it without everybody's help.
Yeah,
so.
Well, I'm pretty certain this wouldn't be without you on this one. So thank you so much. I encourage folks to come off mute and make some noise. Woo!
Yeah. Good news. Woohoo!
Good job, Charles. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. Definitely.
Charles, congratulations on this. We, back 8-9 years ago, when there was a Way Forward committee in the very dark hours of our congregation, we looked into this, and we did not have the resources to even minimally support what these folks would need to help us. We weren't able to help them help us, and you got us there. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. So my hope is, so I have to say that I appreciate that as much from Mark as anyone, because Mark has been hammering on replacing the bell tower steps for years, and he's just continually bringing it up. And I'm so glad that we're finally getting to the point where we're going to do it. So yeah, let me talk a little bit about the grant itself. It requires a match from the church. It requires 100% match, so which means we have to raise the same amount of money. The good news is we can use the money that we raised during the capital campaign in 2019, 2020 as our match. And we still have enough funds on hand that we have already made our match to this grant. So we are 100% good to go. No additional fundraising needed. So good job, all of you, for doing that.
Thanks be to God, and thanks for everyone who shared and contributed. Every dollar helped.
If I may, just to wrap up, let me talk about for a second what we would do with this grant money and why I keep saying historic preservation of the bell tower instead of just the steps or the garden, right? So if we can go next slide for a moment. Through the preparation process of this, we've actually found that the bell tower itself has some issues that need to be dealt with. And so in a sense, the reason why the grant is so large is because we've added to it a little more scope than the initial garden proposal. We're adding some structural shoring up of the structure itself. And if you see on the left, there's a picture taken from very far across the street. There's tiles missing from the roof, which are allowing water into the belfry, which is that little room at the top. The picture on the right is the floor of the belfry after a rain full of water. And there's some deterioration that's taken place in the roof joists, which are that bottom picture. That's a shoulder joist at one of the corners of the bell tower there that's rotted, that needs to be shored up and rebuilt. And so that are things that we would propose to do as part of this overall effort. The good news there is that once you put the scaffolding up, all of these things can be done at the same time. So there's economies of scale, if you will. Cool. What else? What's the next slide? I think I have one more slide, right? I do have one more slide. Okay, and this is looking ahead. I talked a little bit about scope change from the original 2019 proposal by adding additional bell tower projects to finish that completely. There is one change, a second change that I have asked the council for their consent on and would ask for your approval as well. And that's a little bit of backtracking to take a look at some of the stormwater projects that have been proposed in our old Georgetown board application, right? As I said, there's three prongs. There's the bell tower structure and garden. There's the area way, which we'd cover with pavers. And then there was the stormwater management program, for which we had proposed those large stormwater planters. This is definitely the area, the stormwater, where we know the least about what we should do. At the bottom right is a picture of an actual stormwater planter. This is taken from St. Gabriel's Catholic Church up in DC. And I don't know about you, but my overall impression of this is there's like way too much concrete there. And it's huge and it's kind of ugly. And it also requires an outflow to the storm sewer, which requires ripping up the sidewalk. And I think a combination of those things make it a little maybe more than we can or want to tackle at this point in time. So I've asked the council to put the brakes a little bit on on the
But
bioretention planters.
Charles,
Sorry,
I'm sorry. Hopefully, I think you might have someone at your door.
I do. It's Pamela Labadi.
Oh yeah, I think you should. I think she might be delivering something for you. Oh, you're staying on here. So you guys have noticed Charles has done a lot of amazing things for us, from his time as being GLC president to his continued work, especially as he brings us into this new era with the church. So we would love to raise up on behalf of GLC recognition for his leadership and excellence in bringing us through all these phases and continued work on this. So Charles, thank you. Thank you so much. You gave me big shoes to fill and have yet to do it, but I appreciate all you've done and continue to do. And again, I think we need to like have people come off of mute and maybe do a little hooray and celebration for Charles.
Yay!
Charles.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you.
Awesome, Charles.
Thank you. This recognition comes from our council as a whole, who voted unanimously simply to pause and to recognize you at this time. So with this drawing of the church, historically a little bit graphically presented, that you love and that we look forward to getting back to, we hope that you receive with joy our recognition for your leadership. So we interrupted you, but we wanted to do so, and
No,
we
that's
wanted
great.
to surprise you and have it come to you in person, so you have it in hand.
Yeah, that's very cool. Thank you. Yeah, I like that old picture a lot, 1936 picture a lot. So that's very cool. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
We appreciate you.
I'm gonna, before we go back to stormwater, I'm gonna pause and recognize the award for a second. Thank you, but honestly, I couldn't have done it without all of you and your energy. You know, like I said, Mark continually reminding us where we need to go. John Henry calling it whenever he needs something. Everybody sharing and leaning on me to help make sure we're going the right direction. Right, that's been part of it. The pastor's been a huge help in all of this. She made 3 years of being your president pretty much the easiest thing ever. And like I said, at the 250th celebration, I could not have done anything had it not been for the contributions to the congregation of my two predecessors, George Eckert and Jill Schwartz, who, honest to God, took away all of the really tough stuff. Got the congregation through some much more challenging and difficult times, and brought everything to a really even footing for myself and Pastor Brett, so that made it really easy to build on that foundation, right? So huge kudos to them and to all the other members of the council who have done this over the years. So it's a lot of fun, and as I said, I look forward to continuing to help you all with this delightful old building. You know, but it's nice to fall back and change focus a little bit once in a while. So thank you. All right, let me get some coffee and then we'll do stormwater here. Okay, so what was I saying? So what we want to do is take, I want to take the bioretention planters off of the capital plan because they're hideous. Obviously I'm speaking a little bit objectively, but I want you to look at that thing on the bottom right and think if that's something that we truly see happening at Georgetown Lutheran. Because we're going to be taking on more historic preservation with the bell tower, I would propose that we push back to a future year most of the stormwater projects, right? I would propose that we include some this year, and that's the area shown in pink with the new walkway. I propose that we try to keep that new walkway and build it out of a material that's not just cement. There's one of the ideas that's out there, which is called Pervious or Permeable Pavement. That's a picture of some permeable pavement there, pardon me, shown in the picture of the bricks. What this is basically a brick walkway, and you could choose any color of brick. It doesn't have to be gray. You could choose any color of brick, and you basically make gaps between it so water can infiltrate. And then you lay a basin of stone beneath it so the water can infiltrate into the soil instead of running off down into the street. The idea there is to make more of the water that we generate through our roof and rain actually soak into the water on the site, so less of it ends up in the river with pollution, right? What I'd propose we do, and I've enrolled in a class to learn more about this. I've enrolled in a class through the Anacostia Watershed Society to figure out what more of our possible options would be. What I'd propose we do is to focus a little bit more on those future blue areas in another round of projects in the future. One of the reasons being that Anacostia Watershed hands out grants for this. They administer DC's grant program for projects for this. So potentially we might not have to pay for the projects. But also because I think this is an area where it really lets us do what I've proposed a little bit to the council is this sustainability and green stewardship phase, moving past historic preservation and really thinking about with this, it is environmental stewardship, right? Dealing with stormwater, but it's part of understanding that larger ecosystem of like, why should we take good care of the earth, right? And I think that there's a lot of opportunities down that road to potentially explore that. So that's why I'm sort of proposing at this point that we carve off some of that from our doing everything at once plan and focus a little bit more on something that works more with our stewardship approach and also has potentially more additional funding avenues available through it in a future year. And with that, I'll leave it for question. Oh, the thing on the bottom in the middle is a rain garden. It's a cutaway schematic of how a rain garden would work. It's a low area that allows the rain to soak in and feed plants. Questions, thoughts? I'm going to open the chat.
You gave us a lot of great information. We've been very supportive as council for breaking it out into these phases for all the reasons you have listed. I don't think we need to repeat, but I do want to make sure if there's any questions or concerns or whatever thoughts by others, they're recognized. I feel like they have this opportunity to recognize them now, but also feel free to follow up with council or Charles on any of this.
Charles, I just wanted to ask a quick question with regard to the bell tower. When we go through this next phase and put the scaffolding up, is that when we are going to re-louver those windows, or will that be?
That's a good question. Yes, that's proposed for the scope. And this isn't very easy to see in this picture because it's not in the center of the focus. The bell tower itself was originally installed with these louvers and the white separator between them. I don't know if the white thing is still there, but the louvers, which are those slats that you see in the picture, they are still in place. We don't know if they can be reused or if they will need some refurbishment. We prepared the grant budget as though they would need some refurbishment because my feeling is that they're wood covered with metal and they've deteriorated behind there. We obviously can't get in there to see them because they're behind the sheet metal on the outside and they're behind the a lot of pigeon infiltration chicken wire on the inside from previous eras. If you go forward a couple slides, we'll see they are still up there and you can definitely see them. Whether it's just a question of how bad do we need to replace them. See in the middle picture at the bottom there, you can see the slats on the inside. So we know they're there. It's just a question of what their condition is. And it's not until we get up there with the scaffolding, remove and start peeling back all the layers that we're going to know exactly what condition they're in and what can be reused and what has to be replaced. But like I said, we prepared the grant budget so it could take that cushion if it was needed. Incidentally, those large cones that are in that picture are a set of 8 electric chimes that were installed in 1947, something like that. They don't work, but they're up there. Did that answer the question, Bill?
Yeah, thank you. I just was wondering whether that was going to be a part of the project. I think when we take that sheet metal down, there's going to be a lot of discovery that goes in there. It may be a much bigger project than we anticipate, but I think the goal of trying to get it to look a little better than what it does now is a good one.
Yeah, and I hope that I can, to the maximum extent possible, use John Henry's approach of finding excellent vendors and then negotiating them down to God's price, if you will, for not charging us an arm and a leg for change requests and things if we discover those need to happen in Georgetown.
I think you and John have both discovered the joy of working with a 100-year-old building.
It's true.
It has its moments.
All right. Any, I think
I was just going to add, we've discovered some pretty cool things, and a few of us have gotten to go up in the bell tower or seen some of these things. And it is about stewardship and caring for this historic place so that we can continue to worship and share it with the community. So thanks to Charles and to John and to all who do a lot of hands-on work, as well as all of you for your support and care. Pass it back to Cassandra.
Sure. This concludes our agenda. I do want to make sure the floor is open in case there is anything else that folks in the congregation would like to raise. Seeing none, I would like to pass it back to Pastor Brett and ask if she can just provide us maybe a closing prayer before we officially close out the congregational meeting.
Thank you. The Lord be with you. Gracious God, for all these things, thanks. For all that will be, yes. Lead us on, Lord. Help us to give thanks in all circumstances. On the hard days, help us to see the joy in you. Help us to grow closer as community and continue to share with the world. When it's safe, Lord, we look forward to opening these doors, to coming back together and to continuing to share in so many ways. So we thank you for the opportunity and the responsibility to take care of this place. We give thanks and celebrate Charles's leadership and all of these capital projects today. We give thanks for the transparency and care to share about our budget and the good stewardship of our money and resources that we give collectively. Thank you, Lord, for ways in which we grow and serve in the months and years to come. So lead us on, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Excellent. Thank you. You all have a great day. Appreciate you sticking around.
Thanks everybody for sticking around. I'm going to stop the share here. Cassandra needs to get on a flight and you all to your days. So thanks for being a part of our meeting today and take care. We will see you next Sunday, if not before. God bless. Take care. Send an email if you want to talk about anything more about this. But bye-bye for now.